Good morning. I'm Cody Robert Judy, and this is a voice crying in the wilderness. Repent, repent, and prepare ye for the coming of the Lord, even Jesus Christ. Today is January 30th, 2019, and it's about 4 a.m. I got my cup of coffee made. So I thought we'd have coffee together. Entitling this video, I'd call it part 2 of It's Nuclear. Part 1, I kind of discussed a few personal things about me. For the benefit of people that have never heard of me or don't know me. And I think we left off in my detailing a little tweet that I sent off. If you want to follow me at Twitter, I'm at Cody Robert Judy. I sent off a little tweet to Hillary Rodham Clinton and asked her if it was worth it sacrificing Article 2, Section 1, Clause 5 of the United States Constitution, wherein the qualifications of the President are enumerated. And specifically in the Natural Born Citizen Clause. Women should be very, very upset with Hillary Clinton. Mainly because she opposed Barack Obama in the Democratic Party primary in 2008. And refused to call him out on the qualifications of U.S. President for a natural born citizen, which is born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents. It's a line of defense, which is what it was instituted for. I'll get that up a little bit more. It was primarily a A qualification it was a qualification for the reserved specifically at the onset or the drafting of the Constitution that was hinted in common knowledge of the natural born citizen being born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents, or any country. Kenya, for example, has a requirement of being to be president, a natural born citizen to be president, and it constitutes being born in Kenya to Kenyan citizens. And for those who don't know, and I believe that there is more people out there that don't know than there are people out there that do know. Now, educated people who are patriots would understand that the qualification of natural born citizen with the definition born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents places a 2-generation period of time, and that's all it's about, time. Time in the country which acclimated its immigrants into the customs and norms of the country. Hopefully, giving the recipient a sure foundation of both origins or soil, being born from the soil, and also that of education from both. Parents, father and mother. Which is a reference to nature and nurture, recognizing that they both are very important in the bringing up of a child, and in the subsequent qualifications and loyalties to a country. Now, in the argument which the House Judiciary Committee took up in 2000, many testimonies were heard about that, and I went back and read those testimonies. And it was very interesting to hear immigrants who had been naturalized relay their support for natural-born citizen, because Congress had proposed a change. And they did some research, modern-day research, in it, and received testimonies from naturalized citizens or immigrants who had become Americans. And overwhelmingly, their testimony for America's natural-born citizen qualification for the office of the president were for keeping that in an understanding that it requires time to acclimate to a country. Citizens that just barely took their oath to become citizens, I should say immigrants perhaps, that just barely took their oath, especially as they're adults, have been slated with other countries' mores and norms and laws, and a lot of those are contrary to America's. Many are fleeing oppression, and they recognize that in their fleeing there is damage that's being done, both of being pushed out of their homes perhaps being subjects to coyotes, being subjects of blackmail, being subjects of bribery, on the losing end, on the victim side of the coin. Now, those who are opposed to the natural-born citizen qualification for the office of the president and vice president now would say, who better can we trust than someone who has fled from oppression to stand up and command the U.S. Army? Well, these testimonies in the Judiciary Committee of the Congress of 2000 stood up and said, you know what? All of those emotions and those feelings come into play when you're dealing with that particular country, and could cause World War III. Perhaps even the immigrant or the naturalized citizen or anchor baby who was born here in America from a mother that came over fleeing, his or her, the baby's father was killed. And that is a lifetime scar. And if any of you have had a loved one removed from your house as a victim, you'd understand quite clearly that that scar can influence choices and decisions. with what's happening down in Venezuela right now, it's a good example. Perhaps America receives the immigrants flying across the border, caught in the controversy of the presidential elections down there, and has a loved one killed, has a child killed. Could say the same thing about Syria, Iraq, North Korea, Russia, China. The bottom line is the judgment which comes from time and acclamation of America is very, very important. And there's not any way, there's no psychologist that would say that the experiences that a person goes through in his or her childhood, or the way that they are raised, their teachers, their influences, their motivations, doesn't have an effect on the child. So it's a fool's choice. It's a fool's errand. It's a really stupid move to say that just because a child is born here in the United States, irregardless of his parental heritage, that he should be qualified, or she should be qualified, for the office of the president. Actually, the Constitution states he. There's no she mentioned in the qualifications, which is another proposed argument in front, or that could be placed in the office of the president as far as qualifications. Hillary Clinton never took it up as senator. Maybe women should be mad at her for that, angry. She was in a position of being a U.S. senator and never took it up. Point is, if you're a nation of laws, words and the law mean something. And in the 14th Amendment, and I made this argument yesterday briefly in some comments and stories that I posted regarding Kamala Harris, the senator, Kamala Harris, who has now announced her candidacy for the office of the president, and the uprising of or controversy already that she's not qualified because she's not a natural born citizen, and the arguments being formed from the fact that she was born here, and so she's qualified. And I believe, if I remember the article correctly, her father is of the nation of Jamaica, and her mother of some island descent, or some foreign native island descent. I'm not quite sure which one. And the protagonist of the Natural Born Citizen want to form the argument in a racist way, in saying that those in America who want to stand up for the Natural Born Citizen Clause and born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents are prejudiced against Jamaicans or any other country in a racist way. Well, what does race have to do with a time qualification? Nothing. We all agree that America is a beautiful nation of mixed origins, and there's nobody that in their right mind would say otherwise. So how does the racist argument even apply or stand up to a simple standard of time? Now, if that period of time was 25 years, it'd be 25 years. It's a period of time. What's that have to do with race? It wouldn't matter if you were Chinese, Japanese, Russian, North Korean, Jamaican, Native American, Eskimo, Polish, Jewish, whatever. The period of time would still be 25 years for qualification. Well, that's all that born in the U.S. to U.S. citizens represents, is a time period. Whatever it is. But in its wisdom, it prohibits foreigners from ruling over you. That's the wisdom of natural born citizen. And this is not new wisdom. It's been around for a long time. I mean, you can find it in Deuteronomy, in the Holy Bible. Where the Lord tells the Israelites, do not let a foreigner rule over you. Now, if you're given that commandment, how do you assure that? In a reasonable manner. Understanding that people have natural and natural anchors that are built into them that have great significance in their lives. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a present influence, because oftentimes the absence of the influence also affects the character or personality. And this goes right back into the psychological considerations of nurture and nature. And shall we consider common sense? And people that want to ignore common sense have a motive also. And those motives need to be investigated, considered, pondered. And this was also the same argument that John Jay, who became our first U.S. Supreme Court Justice, made to a man who would become the first president of the United States, George Washington. In forming a new nation with laws and a new jurisdiction of law. Now, distractors would form the argument of once you're an American, you're an American. And then, very quickly, they would have to start coming up with arguments of loyalty, of the person being investigated. And it would quickly fall apart. And they know that. And so they use the argument of racist, along with every other slur that they can point out, including spelling of any argument that is proposed, which opposes common sense. There's a lot of people in America that understand exactly what I'm saying, because they're filled with common sense. And it has nothing to do with welcoming immigrants from around the world into our fold, the American fold. Now, if words mean something in law, and if they don't, every argument falls on its head. The 14th Amendment does not exclaim its recipients to be natural-born citizens. It doesn't. There is no natural born citizen in the 14th Amendment. There is only the word citizen. Now, can you say natural born citizens are citizens? Well, yes, they are. But not every citizen is a natural born citizen. Not every immigrant that comes over and takes the oath and becomes an American legally has fulfilled the requirements of time to be qualified for the office of the president. It's common sense. So we are left with what amount of time? Which leaders in Congress have considered over the last modern decade. And let me remind you that Congress has took up this in proposals to change the qualifications for the office of the president some 9 times since the year 2000. This is 2019. They've taken it up 9 times since 2000. I'd say that's a consideration of at least every 2 years. To bring up the racist argument, in the only one office, the office of the president, that requires a greater amount of time, acclamation, experience, wisdom, tradition, and law, you've got to consider these things. The office of representative requires the word citizen. The office of senator requires the word citizen. The office of the president also requires the word citizen, with the caveat, at the time of the adoption of this Constitution, which clearly denotes a difference between citizen and natural born citizen. Because I don't know anybody that's alive today who was a patriot citizen at the time of the adoption of the Constitution. Thus, natural born citizen is the qualification. Now, distractors from the qualification of natural born citizen and the definition being born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents would say, oh, we're going to leave it on the parents. We're going to blame you for your parents. We're going to blame you for the place of your birth in the subject of late Senator John McCain being born in the nation of Panama, native-born son of Panama. Who required not only a congressional act, which is a man-made act of naturalization when he was 11 months old. You can look that up. It's Google. Congress, Panama, a gap, naturalized. You can even throw in there McCain if you want to. I detailed all these arguments to the U.S. Supreme Court. They wouldn't hear it. Well, corruption in common sense doesn't eliminate common sense. Stretch out my leg there. Corruption in common sense doesn't eliminate the basis of truth in common sense. You'd have to be an ass not to think the death of your mother or father wouldn't affect you for the rest of your life. You'd have to be really stupid to think that oppression upon your parents wouldn't affect the child. You have to be really stupid to say that nature and nurture doesn't hold anchors to the character of a person. And the office of the president is all about character. Why else do the media bring up all of the sexual mores or infidelities of candidates if it's not about character? Why does Congress, the Democrats, want to and have proposed, I believe, a law that requires presidential candidates to release 10 years of their tax forms if the office of the president is not entirely about character? Why would they want to see tax forms for 10 years? Because they want someone that's honest. Is the U.S. Supreme Court justices being honest and not considering and standing for the natural born citizen clause of the Constitution, qualifications for the office of the president, born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents? Are the U.S. Supreme Court justices being honest? Well, I've had a little bit of experience with this. Dishonesty and corruption. And it is dishonest and corruption. Justice Sotomayor denied my motion for forma pauperis to proceed in the U.S. Supreme Court in case 1493-96, Judy versus Obama. Did she discriminate against me because of an economic status over a principle of common sense, over a principle that addresses quite particularly the national defense of this country? Well, yes, she did. Did she do that on the basis of race? I believe she's Latino. I'm Caucasian. If we want to be racist, would we say that Justice Sotomayor is discriminating against me because I'm white? Or would it be a discrimination over economic status? Would she be oppressing the poor? Where's the media story about that? It's a real sickening argument when you start to use arguments that are invalid to common sense. Wholly incredible. They actually label themselves. That's what the Salt Lake Federal District Judge in Utah labeled my case. Wholly incredible. Well, he defined his own logic in his tantrum and his unwillingness to stand up for the office of the president in a patriotic way. And not only that, to stand up for the Constitution of the United States in a patriotic way. I mean, he might as well, during the national anthem, just held up his middle finger to the flag instead of putting his hand over his heart. Do you understand that? Do you understand why Americans get angry? President Trump, when you haven't signed the executive order which represents truth in what I'm saying? Do you understand why Americans are angry at you? Having received the proposed executive order in August 11th, 2018. August, September, October, November, December, January. We're almost into February. 6 months. Had that sitting on your desk. Do you understand why Americans perceive the fear of politicians when they say, well, if we do that, there'll be an uprising in this country? No, there won't. You might have a few shenanigans. But what's a few shenanigans compared to a whole country suffering? Every single American suffering, bloodshed. I dare say that fear is unfounded. And in truth, I have had many people of different colors who have agreed with my stand in understanding the wisdom of natural-born citizen being born in the U.S. to U.S. citizen parents. You don't have to be a specific color to understand the wisdom of nature and nurture. You don't have to be a genius. Children from the ages of kindergarten to college. Asked, who's the most influential people in your life? Be it with a presence or missing the presence, would say mom and dad. And who of us celebrating a birthday every single year doesn't reflect upon the place of our birth? And have some fondness come over them in a reflection of, you know what, that's where it all began for me. Idaho Falls, Idaho. Where did it begin for you? I believe the globalists who want to run the world in a new world order want to eliminate all boundaries of countries. Now you could say if that goal was for peace, harmony, prosperity, it would not be a shameful or embarrassing goal. The problem is the United States of America is pretty unique in its defense for individuals. It's a constitutional republic. It's not a pure democracy. If it was pure democracy, Hillary Clinton would be president. Pure democracy, if you're all for that, is an accreditation for the bully. The biggest one wins. How do women feel about that? Let me ask that question to all the females out there. How do you feel about the biggest one winning all the time? And what kind of position does that put you in your own home? Pure democracy is the bully. There's no law that would defend someone who's smaller. It's the beautiful thing about the United States Constitution and the beautiful thing about our country being a constitutional republic which ABC, NBC, CBS, PBS, and Fox News, CNN, all have a problem with sometimes. Fox News. Sometimes. I have heard Fox News come out and once in a while champion a constitutional republic, which is a champion of independent rights, individual rights in a nation. Now, Democrats criticize President Trump for his affairs in eminent domain. Specifically, I think there was some lady that wouldn't sell her property, and eminent domain came in and took it over because there was a road that needed to be put in. And our society hopefully has some empathy for that woman whose house is in the middle of a proposed road, in compensating her. But there was great argument by the Democrats in the affairs of President Trump over the principle of eminent domain, which is basically a fully